7 things an intelligent man never says. Some phrases may sound harmless at first, bold or confident, but beneath the surface, they are like silent poisons that slowly erode a man's growth, character, and wisdom. Have you ever told yourself, "I already know that. I don't need help. That's just who I am. I'll do it later"? Suppose you've ever said any of these. Pause. Not to blame yourself, but to begin the change. Being intelligent isn't about knowing everything or speaking eloquently. It's about understanding what not to say. Today, you're about to discover 7 seemingly innocent phrases that, if left unchecked, will quietly destroy your self-respect, awareness, and inner development. A wise man doesn't just say the right things. He knows when to stay silent. I used to think a man's intelligence showed through his speech, sharp words, persuasive arguments, a confident tone. But after years of observation, learning, and stumbling, I've realized something deeper. A brilliant man isn't just one who speaks wisely, but knows what's better left unsaid. He doesn't need to prove himself. He doesn't need to argue. Most importantly, to defend his ego, he doesn't utter words that drain his inner strength. Stoic philosophy, from Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, to Seneca, never teaches us to speak more. It teaches us to master our inner world, stay grounded, and grow through the smallest thoughts. So this video isn't just a list of things not to say. It's a journey of peeling away the masks of ego, returning to the essence of real strength, strength born from self-awareness, humility, and practiced wisdom. I've made these mistakes too. I'm not writing this from a place of perfection. I've said all 7 of these phrases before, sometimes to protect my image, sometimes out of fear, or simply out of unconscious habit. But each time I lost a chance to learn, hurt others, and limit myself. I once said, "I already know that," when an older mentor offered feedback on my work. The look in his eyes afterwards was quiet, not angry, just disappointed. Because with one short sentence, I had slammed the door on learning. I've learned a lot from those mistakes, and I hope, through this video, you'll also recognize what needs to change. Not to become someone else, but to become a more awake, stronger, and wiser version of yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Silence often has more power than any argument." Epictetus emphasized, "Nature gave us one mouth and 2 ears so we could listen more than speak." Seneca warned, "It's not that people can't learn anything new, they think they already know enough." These philosophers didn't just talk. They were once slaves, emperors, men who lived through war, loss, and betrayal. And yet, they maintained their inner strength by being mindful of what they let slip from their mouths. Up next, 7 phrases to avoid. Right after this, I'll walk you through each phrase an intelligent man avoids. Not to please anyone, but because he understands. Words reflect thinking, and thinking shapes destiny. We'll begin with the most dangerous quote, the one that has killed countless potentials and stopped so many people from ever growing. Quote number 1, "I already know that." The ego disguised as wisdom. Imagine you're sitting in a meeting, a colleague, or someone more experienced begins explaining a process you've done hundreds of times, and without thinking, you blurt out, "I already know that." That phrase may seem harmless at first, even confident, but let me be blunt, it slams the door shut on every opportunity to learn, and an intelligent man, he never says it. "I already know that" is the signature phrase of a closed mindset, the kind that convinces you there's nothing left to learn. But the truth is, even in what you think you know, there are deeper layers, fresh angles, and lived experiences you've never seen before. Marcus Aurelius once warned, "You cannot learn what you think you already know." Stoic philosophy doesn't encourage fake humility. It teaches a quiet power, the ability to listen even when you believe you already understand, because real knowledge is never finished. I once worked with a mentor. He rarely spoke, but when he did, every word mattered. Once, he offered advice on handling a client situation. I had done it so many times that I interrupted him. "Yeah, I already know that." He paused. They looked at me with calm, steady eyes. He didn't say another word, just silence. Later that night, I asked myself, what did I miss? And it hit me. I hadn't just interrupted him. I had missed the chance to see through his experience, something no book could teach. When you say, "I already know that," You cut off the flow of learning. You place yourself above the person speaking. You silently say, "I don't need anything else from you." You reject the richness of another's perspective. Seneca once said, "Never be ashamed to learn what you think you already know." A wise man understands that knowing is not a destination. It's a river, and every time you listen again, you deepen your understanding. The carpenter and the power of listening. There was an old carpenter who had worked for over 40 years. During a training session, a young apprentice demonstrated a new technique he learned online. Instead of interrupting, the older man listened. He nodded, he asked a few thoughtful questions, and he thanked him. Someone later asked, "Why didn't you just say you already knew it?" He smiled. "Because I wasn't just listening to learn something new. I was listening to understand how the next generation thinks." That is the humility of true wisdom, something many people lose behind the mask of knowledge. Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth to listen more and speak less." In Stoicism, controlling your speech is a mark of inner discipline, and "I already know that" is a loss of control disguised as confidence. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "The greatest arrogance is to believe there's nothing more to learn from others." Lesson learned and what to say instead. Instead of saying, "I already know that," try saying, "That's right, but could you share your perspective?" I've experienced that before, but I'd like to hear how you handle it. One small phrase opens a whole new dimension of dialogue and learning, and that is why "I already know that" is so dangerous. It's not just a linguistic reflex, it's a sign of an ego that hasn't been disciplined. A brilliant man never says it, because he knows that well-timed silence is a mark of profound wisdom. So there it is, "I already know that," seemingly a confident statement, yet a locked door to growth. But there is another quote, one even more quietly destructive, because it doesn't just block learning, it strips away your power to own your life. That's when you say, "It's not my fault." Quote number 2, "It's not my fault," when you surrender control over your own life. It's a familiar phrase, but a dangerous one. When things go wrong, a project fails, a relationship falls apart, or even just a day feels off, there's one sentence that often slips off the tongue. "It's not my fault." It sounds like an objective truth. The blame lies with someone else. A teammate, a client, a boss, the situation, or the world. But here's what most people miss. When you say, "It's not my fault," you hand over all control of your life to someone else. "It's not my fault" doesn't bring you peace. It may offer a moment of relief, but it truly steals your power. Because if it's not your fault, then there's nothing for you to fix. And if there's nothing to fix, then nothing will change. An intelligent man understands, taking responsibility doesn't mean taking all the blame. It means owning the part that is within your control. A real story, my friend Michael. I have a friend, let's call him Michael. He lost a significant deal with a client. Immediately he said, "The client was too demanding. The market's unstable right now. My team missed the deadline." And he wasn't wrong, all of that was true. But in his rush to protect the image of being not at fault, Michael missed the more profound lesson. Maybe he didn't anticipate the risks, maybe he wasn't clear in communication, or maybe, just maybe, there was something he could have done better. Seneca once wrote, "We are not harmed by what happens to us, but by our response to it." The Stoic view, where real power lies. Epictetus, a man born into slavery who later became a great philosopher, said something legendary. "It's not what happens to you that matters, it's how you respond." You can't control the weather, you can't control the market, you can't control someone else's mood, but you can always control how you take ownership. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you blame, you give away your power. When you take responsibility, you reclaim your strength." Responsibility is power in disguise. Responsibility isn't a burden, it's power. When you say, "I could have done better here," you open the door to solutions. When you say, "I made a mistake and I've learned from it," you grow. When you apologize, even if only 10% of the fault is yours, you become stronger in the eyes of others. In contrast, those who continually avoid responsibility learn nothing. I always feel like a victim. They are quietly disrespected, not for being wrong, but for running away. Great leaders don't blame. Look at the world's most outstanding leaders. From Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill to modern CEOs like Satya Nadella, they share one trait. They take responsibility first and inspire through their ownership. When Microsoft faced a major product failure, Satya Nadella didn't blame the engineering team. Instead, he said, "I take responsibility because I failed to create an environment where they could succeed." That's why people trust him, follow him, and perform better because of him. Lesson learned and what to say instead. Instead of saying, "It's not my fault," try asking, "I know there were many factors, but what could I have done differently? Where did I fall short? What could I take more ownership of next time?" You don't have to take all the blame. You have to take ownership of what you can control. Only then will you truly become the captain of your life. "I already know that" is ego disguised as intelligence. But "it's not my fault" is the declaration of self-surrender. A wise man doesn't run from responsibility. He embraces it as part of his power, because he knows. Only when you claim your part can you change your path. But sometimes, the refusal to act doesn't come from blaming others. It comes from a seemingly harmless phrase, "I'll do it later." Be careful, because that might be the graveyard where your dreams are quietly buried. Quote number 3. "I'll do it later. The graveyard of good intentions." A promise to yourself, buried. Think back to the last time you told yourself, "I'll call my mom later. I'll start working out next week. I'll write that plan when I have time." Did you notice? Those promises, whether small or deeply important, slowly faded away. Not because you forgot, but because you believed there would still be time. But later is the graveyard of countless dreams. Later is where the most important things are buried beneath the most urgent ones. Procrastination isn't harmless. It's a quiet refusal to act. "I'll do it later" sounds responsible. It feels like you're planning, like you're managing your time. But in truth, it's a well-disguised escape. You don't procrastinate because you lack time. You procrastinate because you're afraid to fail. You're afraid to start without perfection. You're afraid to face yourself. A wise man knows, action doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to begin. A real story, Thomas and his late father. Thomas is a successful man with a family and a stable career. His father, now elderly, lived in the countryside. His father would often call, asking him to go fishing, like they used to when Thomas was a boy. Thomas always replied, "I'm busy this week, maybe next week." Then next week, then the next month, until one day the call came, not from his father, but from the hospital. His father had passed away quietly, carrying with him the days he waited for his son to come back. Thomas told me, "What I regret most isn't missing a fishing trip. I believed I had more time to make it happen." A Stoic perspective, time is an irreversible asset. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." Sounds grim? Not at all. It's a wake-up call to live consciously and not delay what truly matters. Seneca also emphasized, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And Epictetus made it clear, time is the one thing a wise man never throws away. Procrastination doesn't kill opportunity, it kills your strength. Every time you say, "I'll do it later," you weaken your decision-making power. You let fear drag your mind backwards. You train yourself to break promises to yourself. A wise man isn't perfect, but he keeps his word to himself. He doesn't wait for motivation to act, he acts to generate motivation. You don't have to do everything today, but you can do something right now. You don't have to do everything today, but you can do a part of it right now. Instead of saying, "I'll start writing my book later," try, "I'll write a short paragraph today, just 10 minutes." Instead of, "I'll apologize later," try, "I'll send a message right now," short but sincere. Instead of, "I'll love myself more once everything is settled," say, "I'll turn off my phone for 15 minutes and sit with myself." The bricklayer and the first brick. An old bricklayer once told his apprentice, "If you want to build a solid house, don't start with the blueprint, start with the very first brick." The secret to meaningful action isn't in the scale, it's in the start. There's no such thing as a perfect moment. There's only the moment you decide not to delay anymore. Lesson and replacement action. Replace "I'll do it later" with "I'll begin with the smallest thing right now." Action doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to happen. A simple message sent today is more powerful than a perfect apology never written. A tiny step taken now is stronger than 100 grand plans stuck in your head. "I'll do it later" is a sweet sentence because it makes you feel you're in control. But in truth, it throws you into chaos because you don't know when later is. And most likely, it never comes. A wise man understands. Right now isn't the easiest moment, but it's the only one you truly have. When you delay, you rob yourself of the chance to live fully in the present. But there's another quote, one that doesn't just delay action, it strips away connection, isolates you from the world, and hides your humanity behind false strength. It's the quote, "I don't need help." It sounds strong, but in reality, it's a mask worn by pride. Quote number 4, "I don't need help," a mask of pride disguised as independence. When being strong means being alone. "It's fine, I can handle it myself. Thanks, but I don't need help. I'll take care of this on my own." These phrases society often praises, symbols of manhood, independence, and being strong. But here's a truth most people are afraid to face. Refusing help doesn't always come from strength, it often comes from fear. Fear of looking weak, fear of being judged, fear of being seen as vulnerable. A wise man understands, true strength isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about knowing when to reach out and accept support. When pride poses as self-reliance, the quote, "I don't need help," often comes from unacknowledged pride, fear of being judged, unhealed wounds from past rejection or humiliation, societal pressure to equate strength with silence and endurance. But the more we isolate ourselves, the more we stay silent, the more we carry everything alone. The closer we drift toward burnout, depression, and disconnection. A personal story. I thought I could handle everything. At a time in my life, I worked non-stop, juggling career, finances, and family, all alone. Whenever someone offered to help, I smiled and politely declined. "I'm good." But the truth was that I wasn't okay. I didn't dare to say it. One day, a close friend visited me. He didn't talk much, he just sat beside me. Then he asked, "When was the last time you asked for help?" I couldn't answer. I froze. He said, "You don't have to prove you're strong. You have to be real." That sentence woke me up, and from the moment I dared to open up, I began to heal. I began to live again. Stoic wisdom. Even an emperor needs advisors. Marcus Aurelius, one of Rome's most extraordinary emperors, once wrote in Meditations, "I'm grateful to my teachers, friends, even those who challenged me because they shaped who I am." A king could command armies, yet he still chose to listen to his advisors. So, who are we to think we must carry the world on our own? Epictetus also reminded us, man is not made to live alone, but to cooperate, connect, share. The Stoic doesn't depend on others, but he also doesn't deny the interconnected nature of life. President Lincoln and the team of rivals. During one of the darkest chapters in American history, the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln didn't surround himself with people who always agreed with him. Instead, he deliberately chose those who once opposed him to form his cabinet, what became known as the team of rivals. Why? Because Lincoln understood strength doesn't come from blind agreement. It comes from the diversity of thought from opposing perspectives. And he never hesitated to ask, listen, or seek advice, even as the most powerful man in the nation. In Lesson in Action, replacement instead of saying, "I don't need help," try saying, "I'm going through something. Could you give me some insight? I know I'm supposed to be strong, but I want to share this time." Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is a mark of wisdom, humility, and the courage to be real. A wise man isn't afraid of being judged. He doesn't feel the need to flex or prove anything, because he knows. A man who never asks for help, it is a man slowly cutting off his anchor to the world. Help doesn't make you smaller, it makes you stronger, because now you're not standing alone. Rejecting help doesn't make you more independent. It only makes you more isolated. And sometimes that isolation doesn't come from others. It comes from the walls you quietly build inside your mind. And that leads us to another quote, one that sounds harmless, but silently suffocates the will to grow and live fully. Quote number 5. "I'm too old for that," the sentence that kills new chapters. I'm too old to start over. I'm not young anymore. It's too late now. Sound familiar? Maybe you've said it yourself. Maybe you looked in the mirror, saw the gray hair, the wrinkles, the slower pace, and believed the lie that it's too late to change, start something new, or chase a dream. But a wise man knows. Age is not a limitation. It's a lever for depth, perspective, and power. The sweet trap of acceptance, I'm too old, is often not a truth but a socially accepted excuse. It sounds humble, it sounds realistic, but in reality, it's a quiet surrender of responsibility to keep living actively. It's hiding behind age to avoid fear of failure, rejection, or being judged. As Seneca once wrote, "We do not stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." Harry Bernstein, first book at age 93. Harry Bernstein was a regular man, an editor all his life. At 93, when most people settle into retirement, he chose something else. He started writing his first book. Title: The Invisible Wall, a memoir about his poor childhood in a divided English town. No one expected anything from a 93-year-old man. Publishers rejected him, but he kept writing, and then the book became a huge success. He went on to publish 4 more books after the age of 96. When asked why he started so late, he smiled, "Because I knew I still had something to say." The Stoic view, age is a privilege. Marcus Aurelius, emperor, philosopher, once wrote, "As long as you are alive and breathing, live like a man, with clarity, strength, kindness, and resolve." The Stoics did not fear death. They only feared wasting what life remained. They believed there's nothing sadder than a man who's alive, but has stopped longing to live. Old age doesn't kill dreams, surrender does. I once knew a man nearly 60 who began learning photography. People laughed, even his family discouraged him. But he kept learning, he kept shooting, he kept posting. 5 years later, he became a semi-pro travel photographer with a following, a purpose, and a joy of his own. He told me, lesson and replacement action. Instead of saying, "I'm too old for that," try saying, "I have enough life experience to start this with deeper wisdom. I can learn at my own pace. As long as I'm alive, I still have the power to choose." Don't let age become the cage that imprisons the life within you. Because if a 93-year-old man can write a book, then you, at any age, can rewrite your chapter. A wise man doesn't count the years he has left. He counts the meaning he can still create. Because he knows the most significant limitation isn't age. It's the thoughts you choose to believe. And he believes in rebirth from within, no matter his age. Age may slow your steps, but only your mind can make you stop entirely. And sometimes what stops you isn't fear of failure, your age, or lack of opportunity. It's a quiet, dangerous quote that locks you inside an old version of yourself. Quote number 6. That's just who I am. A surrender disguised as self-knowledge. When a sentence shuts the door on growth, I'm just hot-tempered. I'm not social. I don't like small talk. I'm not good at that. Never have been. I was born this way. Do you notice the common thread? All of these are closing statements, not closing a conversation, but closing the door on personal growth. That's just who I am doesn't mean you understand yourself. It means you've chosen to settle and wrap it in the comfort of your past. A wise man knows your nature is not fixed. Your character is not a life sentence. Life is a journey of becoming, not staying the same. Why we cling to the old self, "that's just who I am," often hides a defense mechanism against the discomfort of change, a silent apology for flaws we're not ready to fix, fear of being judged if we try and fail, ego clinging to an outdated identity to avoid pain. As Epictetus wrote, it's not the things themselves that disturb us, it's how we interpret them. Likewise, you're not limited by your nature. You're limited by the belief that you can't change it. A real story, a father's quiet transformation. I once knew a father, nearly 50, quiet, stern, emotionally distant. His son feared him. They were never close. One day, the boy broke a bowl. He stood frozen, expecting to be scolded. But instead of yelling, the father said, "It's okay, just be more careful next time." Everyone was shocked. Later that night, I asked him, "When did you change?" He looked at me and said, "When I realized that saying that's just who I am wasn't helping me get closer to my son." I said nothing, but inside, I felt a deep respect, and something in me softened too. The Stoic view, change is the nature of life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Life is movement, is flow, only the dead are still." So if you're still breathing, you still have the right to change. You have a responsibility to change, if it makes you a better man, for yourself, for others, for the world. Lesson and replacement action. Instead of saying, "That's just who I am," try saying, "I'm learning to improve that. I'm not good at this yet, but I'm practicing. I used to be that way, but I believe I can be different." You don't need to change everything in one night. You only need the courage to take one step, to face your old self honestly, and give yourself a real chance to move towards something better. A wise man doesn't hide behind the label of personality. He faces himself every day, reflecting on how he lives, thinks, and reacts, and makes conscious adjustments, because he understands there's no such thing as "that's just who I am." There is only, "This is how I choose to live today." And if given the choice, he will always choose evolution over stagnation. "That's just who I am" is how you quietly lock the door to transformation, a door that only you can open from the inside. But there's another sentence, one that doesn't shut you off from yourself, but it shuts you off from the world. A sentence that makes you give up before you even try. It's the statement, "That's not possible." A sentence that sounds realistic, but it's a silent death sentence for every dream you've ever had. Quote number 7, "That's not possible," the sentence that defeats you before the battle begins. When being realistic is fear in disguise. That idea is too far-fetched. Who even starts something at this age? Without money or connections? How could it work? That's just not going to happen. Have you ever heard or said sentences like these? They sound wise, practical, even grounded. But the truth is, "That's not possible" is rarely a fact. It's usually a reflection of the limits inside your mind. A wise man understands nothing is truly impossible, only things that have never been fully attempted. Impossible is just the armor fear wears. When you say, "That's not possible," what you often mean is, "I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid people will laugh. I don't believe I'm good enough to handle what comes next." As Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Fear exaggerates the worst-case scenarios, and "that's not possible" becomes the mind's way of avoiding the discomfort of real challenge. The Stoic view, impossible is an illusion. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Your mind can adapt to any obstacle if you stop exaggerating it." Stoicism doesn't deny the existence of difficulty. On the contrary, it embraces challenges, but it refuses to surrender. Epictetus taught, "Just because you haven't done something doesn't mean it can't be done. Just because you haven't overcome it doesn't mean it's beyond you." A project once deemed impossible became a breakthrough. I once joined a project with an impossible deadline, a tight budget, and an inexperienced team. Everything in me screamed, "There's no way this will work." But instead of saying it's impossible, I started asking, what can I control today? What's the first small step? Who can I ask for help? Step by step, one focused action at a time. And in the end, not only did we complete the project, we delivered results beyond expectations. Impossible is the voice of someone who hasn't tried long enough. If you've ever said, "I can't learn new things, I can't forgive, I can't do it as well as others," then ask yourself, have I truly given it my all? Am I willing to try again, differently this time? A wise man does not deny reality, but he refuses to let old facts define new limits. Lesson in replacement action. Instead of saying, "That's not possible," try saying, "I don't know how yet, but I'll figure it out. Someone else has done it. I'll learn from them. I'm not sure if it'll work, but I won't quit without trying fully." Every breakthrough was once a fantasy, and the ones who created them were the few who kept going when everyone else turned back. "That's not possible" isn't a realistic statement. It's a spell that kills action before it begins. A wise man doesn't repeat it, not because he's naive, but because he knows impossible is a starting point, not the end. These 7 seemingly harmless quotes, 7 invisible chains quietly suppress a man's inner strength, clarity of thought, and growth potential. But now you've recognized them, and once we recognize, we gain the power to choose, to repeat them, or to rise beyond them. Let's take one more look in the 7 quotes. A wise man never says, and the powerful lessons that lie beneath each one. 1. I already know that. The ego disguised as wisdom, it shuts down learning and closes the door to deeper understanding. A wise man listens, even to what he thinks he already knows, because he understands that knowledge never truly ends. 2. It's not my fault. An escape from responsibility that gives away your power. When you blame, you hand your future over to others. A wise man takes ownership. Not to carry a burden, but to claim the power to change. 3. I'll do it later. The sweet trap of procrastination. Dreams don't die from failure, they die from the beginning. A wise man acts today, even if it's a small step, because he knows later is a dangerous illusion. 4. I don't need help. Pride dressed up as independence. It isolates you and cuts off the strength that comes from connection. A wise man is not afraid to ask, because he knows that help doesn't make him weak, it makes him wiser and more complete. 5. I'm too old for that. A quiet surrender to new chapters. Age doesn't limit you, only outdated beliefs do. A wise man embraces every stage of life because he knows that growth has no expiration date. 6. That's just who I am. A retreat into old identity. It avoids change, avoids growth, and justifies poor patterns. A wise man chooses who he becomes. He doesn't cling to who he once was. 7. That's not possible. A surrender before the battle begins. It's not that the task is impossible. It's that you haven't pushed far enough yet. A wise man doesn't wait for things to become easy. He takes action until it becomes possible. These 7 seemingly harmless quotes, 7 invisible chains quietly suppress a man's inner strength, clarity of thought, and growth potential. But now you've recognized them, and once we recognize, we gain the power to choose, to repeat them, or to rise beyond them. Let's take one more look in the 7 quotes. A wise man never says, and the powerful lessons that lie beneath each one. 1. I already know that. The ego disguised as wisdom, it shuts down learning and closes the door to deeper understanding. A wise man listens, even to what he thinks he already knows, because he understands that knowledge never truly ends. 2. It's not my fault. An escape from responsibility that gives away your power. When you blame, you hand your future over to others. A wise man takes ownership. Not to carry a burden, but to claim the power to change. 3. I'll do it later. The sweet trap of procrastination. Dreams don't die from failure, they die from the beginning. A wise man acts today, even if it's a small step, because he knows later is a dangerous illusion. 4. I don't need help. Pride dressed up as independence. It isolates you and cuts off the strength that comes from connection. A wise man is not afraid to ask, because he knows that help doesn't make him weak, it makes him wiser and more complete. 5. I'm too old for that. A quiet surrender to new chapters. Age doesn't limit you, only outdated beliefs do. A wise man embraces every stage of life because he knows that growth has no expiration date. 6. That's just who I am. A retreat into old identity. It avoids change, avoids growth, and justifies poor patterns. A wise man chooses who he becomes. He doesn't cling to who he once was. 7. That's not possible. A surrender before the battle begins. It's not that the task is impossible. It's that you haven't pushed far enough yet. A wise man doesn't wait for things to become easy. He takes action until it becomes possible. Real life lesson. On the journey of becoming a man, it's not an opportunity we lack, but awareness. It's not that we lack advice, but the courage to face ourselves. These 7 quotes may seem like simple habits, reflexes, or throwaway lines, but left unchecked, they become default ways of thinking. And over time, they quietly rob us of the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to connect, the opportunity to transform our lives. A wise man is not perfect. He is awake enough to correct himself little by little every single day. Now is the time to look inward, to examine your inner dialogue, and start clearing out the thoughts and words that no longer serve your evolution. Awaken and act. You don't need to be a perfect man. You don't need to eliminate every limiting habit or phrase overnight, but you do need to begin. Begin with awareness. Begin by pausing before speaking words that shrink your identity. Begin by making one small choice each day to become a stronger, wiser version of yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, remind yourself that you have been given a new day to act right, think right, and live right." And maybe the most powerful thing you can do today is this. Clear out what no longer serves you. Pause before you repeat a phrase that limits you, and begin building a life rooted in responsibility, clarity, and self-mastery. If this video spoke to you, then chances are it will speak to another man out there. Someone is silently struggling in their way. Share this video with him. One small action from you, it could spark a decisive shift for someone else. And if you are on the journey to become a man of calm, strength, and inner clarity, then Sovereign Stoic is the place for you. Here, we don't chase flashy motivation. We seek depth. We train the mind. We cultivate stillness. We face life with reason and resilience. Hit subscribe to Sovereign Stoic and turn on the bell so you won't miss any content crafted to sharpen your mind and soul.